Hi there, my name is Donovan, and I am hosting this special Black History Month panel called Baylor Voices, brought to you by the College of Arts and Sciences here at Baylor University. Today, I'm being joined by two guests who have both shown a great amount of excellence and leadership here on Baylor's campus. And we're going to be having a discussion on diversity and inclusion here at Baylor, as well as how you can get involved to start making a change on campus. Without further ado, please welcome Dr. Coretta Pittman and Dr. Jeffrey Griggs. We hope you enjoy.
My name's Coretta Pittman, and I did my undergraduate work at a small school in Tennessee called Austin Peay State University in the early 90s. I left there, and I did my PhD work in Detroit, Michigan at a school called Wayne State University. My specialization is in writing studies and rhetoric. And my subfields are in literacy studies, critical race theory, and probably, I'd say, popular music and culture.
Oh, wow. Very, very, very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, and how about you, Dr. Griggs?
My name is Jeffrey Griggs. I'm the director here in the Department of Multicultural Affairs. I have my educational journey, let me start there. I was at the University of Kentucky for both my undergrad degrees and my master's degree. And then I ended up getting my doctoral degree from Tarleton State University. Just completed that about 2 years ago. So, wow, time flies. But multicultural affairs is a big thing to me. I love, being able to connect the things that they're learning in classes like Dr. Pittman's class with helping them get some of the life skills that they'll get later on that'll help them as they leave our institutions. So whatever we can do to that global and worldwide leadership that we talk about in our university's mission statement, that's my part. How can I help them in getting those skills that'll help them get to that next level?
Love that. And, one of the main reasons we wanted both of you specifically on this episode that we're doing is because both of you are very, very good leaders here, specifically in the Baylor community, very, very proficient African-American leaders, but you both have very, very distinct and individual backgrounds. So one reason why we wanted both of you specifically is because we wanted that diversity of backgrounds. To kind of get, for what we're discussing today, kind of get kind of the ideas and background from different perspectives. So the question is, in what ways do you believe collaboration between students, faculty, and community leaders can contribute to a more inclusive and supportive environment here at Baylor?
That's a really good question, Donovan. I've actually had to learn some difficult lessons about that, because sometimes I think as a professor who has a PhD, I know what people need because I've been trained to sort of think that way, to follow the scholarship, to build on the scholarship. And what I've learned most recently, though, is that we need to, and me being a professor, but also an administrator, I need to find out the needs of the people before I make a decision. So I can give you an example of that. In 2020, we had a number of Baylor students do an Instagram post called Dear Baylor. Mm-hmm. And these students were talking about their experiences in the classroom, and I mean like students of color. And even before I was reading Dear Baylor, I was thinking about, along with some colleagues, an ethnic studies minor. But we hadn't really communicated with students. We thought, okay, this is a need. We see it as a need as scholars. But reading those posts taught me, well, wait a minute, we actually need to be talking to students, asking students what do they need. And so I think it's really important that I always remember I might have information, but other people have information that they can help me make a better decision. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of the student to faculty administrator kind of role I need to be thinking about. And also I need to do a better job in sort of engaging the community. Because if Baylor's here, Baylor has a number of resources, it's important that we sort of talk to the community. What are your needs? How can we maybe perhaps build partnerships? And so I think it is really, really important if we want to build an inclusive community here on campus and in the Waco community and even beyond. We need to be seeking answers from the community, from students, other faculty and staff to do better by everybody.
Excellent. What about you, Dr.
But,
Creeks?
you know, I'm loving that you let me piggyback off that a little bit because it made me think a lot of just my early journeys, just starting as a higher education professional. I was like, I'm now in the shoes of the professional. These students need to listen to me. Like, I got the answers. But, you know, one thing I've learned early and often that some of the best ideas in tackling these situations come from our students. They have thoughts and opinions to where, as administrators, as professionals, we just need to provide a space for them to be able to share these things, to speak freely, and to let them know that their voices are being heard. So I remember the Dear Baylor situation that Dr. Pittman is mentioning, and then, you know, the numerous conversations that came out of our office from those conversations, not just between staff, but students asking, hey, did you see this one? Did you see this one? And what were your thoughts? And then asking, can they share their thoughts? And, you know, a lot of those things I think we realize once you do hear the voice of the students do have the power to implement change on this campus, on every campus, but, you know, just to allow them to be a part of that change process. That's a lot of the things that they're asking for, is just let me be a part of the process. Let me see what is happening. How can I also support what I would love to see happen as well? So when we do give them that seat at the table, I think it helps a lot in coming up with outcomes that we're hoping to make not just Baylor, but the world a better place.
Gotcha. No, that's awesome. Awesome. Both of you have very good answers there. Thank you. So I know, you know, both of you have kind of actually touched a little bit on this next question. And so for your answer here, you can kind of emphasize what you were kind of talking about, or kind of discuss a new challenge. But the question here is, we'd like you to share a challenge that you faced and any strategies that you employed to overcome it. Specifically hoping to emphasize collaboration here.
You want me to go ahead and go first? So I'll tell you, I've been here since 2013, and one of the things that our office noticed when I first got here was that we weren't very involved in the orientation process. So how can we make sure that all students know that offices like the Office of Multicultural Affairs exist? How do we make sure that our students of color are able to see diverse faces as they go through the orientation process? So we had some conversations with those over in new student programs in about 2016 about what would that look like to include us in the orientation process. So the individuals in charge at that time talked to us about starting this session called We Are the Baylor Family. So what does it mean to be a Baylor Bear? So and it's still going on to this day, to where we've played around and adjusted some things as time has gone on, but playing a little game to get students to understand that yes, they are different, but there's similarities in their differences, and how we expect them to bring their authentic self here to Baylor, but also create that space to change, to grow, to mold, to learn something different than what they may in the environment that they have been raised in. So it was interesting. I'll tell you about 2016. 2016 was also when we had the whole Title IX situation. So our conversations at first, where we were supposed to just talk about what it means to be a part of the Baylor family, changed to where we had to create a space for students to ask questions about, hey, what are your thoughts as students on what is going on here at Baylor? Do you have any questions? So that was something that I wasn't prepared for at all. But to be able to have those conversations with upper admin, to be able to have it with different departments, and, you know, get their thoughts and feedbacks on how we should tackle this situation, but just making sure we provided that space for students to not just ask questions, but share their thoughts and opinions as well. It actually turned out real well, which is a big reason I think we're still having some similar spaces in the orientation process today. So it takes a village. I tell everybody, even though we're multicultural affairs, we're not the end all be all when it comes to everything diversity. There's people in other areas who have just as much knowledge as we do in terms of these topics and can provide great input and insight on the things that we're doing. So we try to keep a coalition of people around us. There's always somebody like a Dr. Pittman who will quickly tap, hey, we got this thought, we got this question, we got this student. Can you help us here? And making sure that we just continue to use that village, knowing it's going to help everybody here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, Dr. Grease was reminding me, he sent a student to me, and she sent me an email. And this is an African-American young woman, and she just had some questions about course offerings around kind of Black subjectivity. And she came to my office yesterday. She had a lot of tough questions for me. You talk about like a kind of challenge that I was faced with, you know, meeting this student. She challenged me. And what she wanted to know was, like, where are African American professors on campus. And I began to think about my own experiences as an undergraduate student. Those are questions that I was kind of wrestling with. And so what it told me was that, well, maybe I'm just not visible enough. I think I'm doing the work. I think I'm a good teacher. I'm in my building. I'm engaging. I'm supporting my students through McNair. I'm helping them through the graduate school process. But she was like, I don't know where you all are. And so it made me, again, think about, well, what are some things that I can do to be more visible so that students who are coming here, not just Black students, but white students, Asian students, Latinx students, know that I'm here, but I'm not just here because I'm Black, but I'm here because I believe in them and that I want them to succeed. And so I've got to figure out how to be more visible. How do I, Dr. Greaves talks about, making space available. How do I do that kind of work where people can feel comfortable coming into my building, talking to me, challenging me to do better, to be better. And so I've got to figure that out. Again, I'm not the only one. He sent her to me. I'm going to actually send her to somebody else and say, okay, go challenge them. You challenge me, now go challenge them. So I think being more visible on campus is something that I have to kind of work with to meet the students where they are.
Excellent. Yeah. Awesome. Wow, both of you guys are knocking this out of the park. I love how you're piggybacking off each other too. That's awesome. Ah, man. So for each of you individually, what is your vision for a more diverse and supportive campus here in the Baylor community? And to achieve that vision, what efforts need to be made by the community, by students, by faculty, by community leaders, etc.?
I think sometimes we think diversity means and inclusion means I'm going to hire a person of color to teach in a subject area for which they are intimately connected. So I'm going to hire an African American male to teach African American poetry, 20th century poetry. And we're going to hire one person, and that's diversity. Or we're going to hire a Latinx scholar to teach, Chicano literature. We're going to hire that one person, and that's diversity, and that's inclusion. And in some sense, that's sort of one part of the pie. I think, as I get older, I think about diversity a little differently. I think diversity is hiring a Shakespearean scholar who's not a white male, who might be an Asian American person, but who studies Shakespeare through the lens of their experience. I think of that as also being a part of this question around diversity and inclusion. Or hiring a president, who's a woman, which we have an awesome president who is a woman. And so I think we have to be much more expansive in the ways that we think about diversity. Because yes, you want content, subject, scholars, areas filled with people, one, who wanted to do the work, who are passionate about the work, and who are from that community. But it's also okay to hire somebody who is Southeast Asian as your vice provost of an institution. That's also diversity, giving people opportunities. And so I don't want to be so narrow in my thinking that diversity only means one thing, or hiring somebody who is differently abled. Increasingly we are having discussions around disability and diversity and what that means and how we need to approach our brothers and sisters who are differently able but have, of course, the intellectual abilities as anybody else to be successful. And so I want us to think more broadly in our hiring practices, what makes a great candidate? What can they do for us? But also be aware that there are some gaps, there are some people, if there's a room full of men, they all look the same, we need to be asking questions because we know that there are people out there who are capable. Why aren't they in the room? So I would sort of offer this institution and even myself a more expansive notion of what it means to be inclusive. And, I know that we're at Baylor. We cannot forget our LGBTQI plus folks as well. So they are great. I know that we are wrestling with that at this institution, but we have to continue to think about making their lives a part of the big Baylor family much more openly than I think we currently do. So that's how I would sort of approach that, as I age.
Said a lot there, Dr. Pittman. One thing that I will say is, particularly as we're at this age where diversity at Baylor is constantly changing, what that looks like, how we tackle that as a Christian institution. I tell everybody one thing that I struggle with personally is I'm a competitive person, and I constantly am seeing how Baylor is being recognized as, we're this top school, is this great place to work for. We're this top school in terms of first year programming, orientation, all these great things. We have a top business school program. I really want us to start receiving some awards for diversity. And to me, that means we can talk about all the diversity we see here as employees and as students of the institution. I want those on the outside to see it as well, to where they recognize that the work we're doing here is good work, and that they want to not just recognize us, but I think about it in terms of admissions. As a student, I'm banging down the door to get to this institution because they have something that I want. As a parent, I'm so excited about the work that's going on here that, I'm not even looking at that bill that I have to pay eventually. I just want my child to go to this institution because I know they're going to get a great experience here. So, what the things that we can do, we have our own views of what diversity looks like here. As I said, they're constantly changing, but how can we sit here and think of what diversity looks like from a global aspect, thinking of the different things that Dr. Pittman just mentioned, where it's putting a person that may not be the person you think belongs in that position, and showing that makeup as a whole to everyone else, and they see, oh, Baylor's doing something here. Let's see what's going on there. I think particularly with us being a private institution right now in the midst of everything going on in the world, we're uniquely positioned right now to do some of these things. And my hope is that we can be that leader, that change champion that's going to champion these initiatives that will be going on, and that a lot of people can come here to Baylor and see the great things that we're doing and take it back to the places that they work at. So,
absolutely awesome. Yeah, great. All right, so this is gonna be the last question. So for any current student, staff member, faculty member, or community member aspiring to become a leader and contribute to Baylor's goals of diversity and inclusion, what advice or insights would you give to them?
I'll give you a break, Dr. Pittman, and go first. I was talking to somebody recently, and the advice that I gave them as a student with an issue that they were facing is something that has helped me, not just when I was a student, but even in my professional career as well. Like I'm a sports fan. I love basketball. So somebody once told me, you miss all the shots that you don't take. A lot of times we're our own worst enemy. We're in our heads to where we do not take that initiative. We do not take that step and we might have the answer that's going to change everything, but we have imposter syndrome has hit us to where we just are afraid to do what needs to be done. So I like to tell everybody, my advice to them would be to find people who are going to be brutally honest with you, some individuals that will not spare your feelings, knowing that it's going to help you in the long run. I've had a great mentor that used to be my boss. She's no longer my boss, but she was brutally honest with me for the time I actually interviewed with her over 10 years ago. Funny story, I interviewed here at Baylor. My last interview was with her, and in that interview, she told me everything that I did wrong. So I'm looking at her like, I'm not about to get this job. So the crazy thing about it was I had another institution that I interviewed with a few days later, and I did so well that by the time I got off the plane headed back home, they had already called and said, hey, would you want this job? And I'm like, oh, let me hear from Baylor first if this woman cared about me enough to tell me all this and it actually worked. But just, I tell people, it's one of those things you just really have to find somebody that's going to pour into you and then be willing to listen to the advice and the sound wisdom that they're giving you. But don't be afraid. I say, I know it's scary and I know that's easier said than done. We can all be like Nike and say, just do it. But it takes some steps to even get to that part of the process. But not operating in fear. I think going from that angle and trusting your gut, but just realize if you're doing it with the right mindset, you have the right heart behind what you're trying to do, everything's going to work out.
Awesome.
You know, it feels really good to complain about what an institution is not doing. It's cathartic to get with your fellow friends at the water cooler and say, oh, this isn't happening, that isn't happening. And you can do that, you know, often. The difficult thing is to take that energy and to transform that into change. So I actually would encourage, you know, anybody on campus who's really wanting to do diversity and inclusion work, whatever that looks like for them, is to, you know, step away from the water cooler and to find committee work or people that they can work with and to become active and to not sit on the sidelines. And I say that because, you know, it's hard work. And it's easy to want to complain and sit on the sidelines and to say, well, that institution will never change. Mm-hmm. But in fact, it is changing. I mean, Baylor is a place, as Dr. Griggs has pointed out, is in flux. And to me, that's a good thing. And so, you know, we have to be mindful of that as faculty, as students, as staff, as community folks, that change can happen, but it never happens if you're on the sidelines throwing darts from a distance. You got to be up front, maybe throwing the darts from the other side, and become active in that. So there are so many organizations on campus. There are lots of people, lots of things to do. So look at the BU calendar. Mm-hmm. Actually, open your email and read the email and go to some of those events. Because it's just pointless to waste the resource. That resource is the physical body, but also the spiritual, the mental. Why would you waste that resource when you could be active in a community of people who want to make change? And so I say get active, complain, get active, and to be a part of that. So that would be my advice. I'm a person who loves to complain. I call my best friend on a hard day. I say, girl, let me tell you what happened. And we laugh and we joke about it. And then I get up the next day and say, okay, what can I do about all the complaining I did the night before with my best friend? So I'm not perfect, but I do know there are avenues for participation. And so I would strongly encourage people to do that.
Awesome. Well, that's all the questions we have, but thank you very much, both of you, for joining me today. And we appreciate the insights and information that you shared with us today. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
You know, it was really great to hear Dr. Pittman and Dr. Griggs' perspectives on how we can improve diversity and inclusion here on campus. It was also great to hear how you can become more involved in becoming an ambassador for change on Baylor's campus. Now, if you'd like to learn more about what Baylor is currently doing as far as our diversity and inclusion efforts, we'd encourage you to go down to the description. We're going to have some resources there where you can find out what we're currently working on. Also in the description, you can find some resources on how you can start to get connected and start taking steps to become an ambassador for change, for diversity, and for inclusion at Baylor. And as always, if you have any questions about the discussion we've had today, we'd encourage you to comment them down below. We'll be sure to get back to you as soon as we can. But thank you very much for watching, and we hope you enjoyed.